Welcome to Engine Adventures. Today we're going old school. We've got a 2012 Honda Pilot. This is the all-wheel drive version with the VTM-4, and the reason for testing this vehicle today is it's the first generation of VTM. Actually, this is a second generation vehicle, but it's the same system used in the first generation Pilots, and I should be getting within the next month a Honda Pilot Ridgeline with the VTM-4, the intelligent VTM-4. So we'll go ahead and test this today, and then we'll make a comparison to the new system that actually has torque vectoring and see how it does. This thing, because it has four-wheel independent suspension, it rides actually pretty good on roads like this. Really, it's not a hardcore off-roader by any means, and even this stuff, it'll probably wear out the shocks pretty quick, but for occasional driving on roads like this, it's actually really smooth and really comfortable. It is a Honda, so it's going to have really good reliability and should last you forever. And we'll get into a little bit of the harder off-road stuff here in a second, but it really does. It's a little bit noisy inside. I mean, it's kind of it's not the Acura, of course, it's the Honda, so it's still very controlled and smooth. It remains planted even over the bigger bumps because of that independent suspension. And even the RAV4 that we recently had, I would say this rides a little bit better on these kind of roads than that RAV4 TRD off-road. And I feel like the RAV4 had really limited suspension travel, even more so than this. I mean, they're all independent suspension, so you would think that they would be similar, but they're not made for going off-road, so I guess a RAV4 is, but this one is definitely not, and it definitely rides a little better off-road. Now we'll get to this test spot up here and we'll do the articulation test. So this one is the all-wheel drive version and it has the VTM-4, which is variable torque management. And basically, to use that, you have to be in first gear, second gear, or reverse, and it shuts off after 18 miles per hour. And I'm not sure how the center differential works. It may be connected full time. And then on the rear differential, it has a wet clutch with a servo motor that applies it, and basically it can just lock the rear differential. And essentially, I know there's a center differential because I changed the fluid in it, but I don't know if it's connected full time, so it's always spinning that drive shaft, the rear drive shaft, and then that rear differential can disconnect completely, so it's front wheel drive only when you're cruising. And most of the time, sometimes when you're accelerating or accelerating a little harder, it will transfer power to the rear, but for the most part, your daily driving, it's just front wheel drive. And then if it detects slippage, it'll send more power to the rear. And then if you hit the lock button, it's a 50-50 split. So it'll send 50% to the rear, 50% to the front. But then on the rear axle, it's an additional 50-50 split, with the rear differential being essentially locked. It is a wet clutch, so it can be overcome. It can start to slip. And then we do have the traction control and vehicle stability control. And we'll try with that on and off.
Alright, so in normal mode you can see the wheels slip just a little bit at first, and then it does a really good job of transferring power side to side on the rear and basically locking up those two clutches to get it up the little articulation ramp here. It also uses the traction control to apply the brakes to the spinning wheels. Alright, you can see with traction control off how much the braking system is applied to the spinning wheels to transfer power side to side. So it has a wet clutch for each rear axle shaft going to each side, and without the extra braking force applied to the spinning wheels, it's just not able to transfer power back to the other side. And with the VTM-4 Lock on, you can see that it's already starting to scrub the tires a little bit. As I'm turning, there's a little bit of driveline binding. So the system does engage pretty well, but still, like we noticed with the traction control off, there is some slip in the clutches.
Alright, just wanted to show you how to do the VTM-4. So right now we're in drive. Drop it down into first gear. And then we hit the button right here. And you see that light come on. That means it's on. So there are no gauge lights or anything up here, no dash lights that tell you that the VTM-4 is on and locked, but if you turn on the button, you can see on the top of the button right there. So then the traction control's here, and you just have to hold it for a second. So push it, and you'll hear it beep, and then it has it right there. Same thing to turn it off. Push it and hold it for a second, and then you can hear it beep, and then it's off. So we're gonna climb this hill. It's pretty steep, and I don't know, honestly, if we'll be able to make it. It might have the same issues as some of the other vehicles with higher gearing, where it just kind of overheats the all-wheel drive system before it can make it up. Let's give it a shot.
So as you can see, it does a really good job of getting the power where it needs to go, but even Honda claims that this system was only designed on dirt to handle a 53% grade, and we get close to a 70% grade at the steepest point on this. So I mean, the system just can't handle that much of an incline. There's just not enough low-end torque for this. The engine output horsepower is 250 horsepower and torque's 253, but it also is a 5-speed transmission with no low-range transfer case. Alright, so I am full throttle through all of this. It just can't overcome the steepness of the hill and the braking force on the spinning wheels. I try and get a running start at it, and it still just can't quite make this climb. Alright, so here we're just going to show the other angle so you can see what's going on with the front wheel, but basically the same thing happens. I can't get enough momentum to carry me up over it, and there's just not enough torque in this engine, and the drivetrain doesn't have low range gearing to be able to overcome the braking force on the ABS and traction control system. So I'm full throttle right here. I have the pedal all the way down for this whole section, and then let off right there. So there's just not enough torque there. So here I'm even taking the easier line. All four wheels remain on the ground, and it just runs out of torque even just climbing this really steep hill without lifting a wheel. Finally thought I got it here, but just right at the top there was a little spot where it was lifting a wheel and it couldn't overcome it. Ended up just backing down the whole thing and letting that little green Jeep go up the hill. So after all of that, there's a lot of stress on the rear differential, and the pump that controls the wet clutches started to make some noise. So I went ahead and bought the Honda VTM fluid and changed it out. That fluid's like 30 bucks for a gallon, and you use like 3 quarts or so. So not a big deal, and it only takes 15-20 minutes to change it out. You do have to lower the spare tire to get it out of the way, but pretty easy overall. Alright, so it's pretty easy. You just take a 3/8 inch ratchet and get the extension, loosen the top one first to make sure you can, and then you pull the bottom one out, let all the fluid drain. Go ahead and close the bottom one, remove the top one, put in the fluid. It's nice if you have a pump to do that, and then close the top one back up. And then you can replace the crush washers on both the top and bottom. I did that the last time I changed this. It's recommended for every change. I didn't do it this time, and I have them if I need them. If it does start to leak, I'll just go ahead and switch those out. So my pump doesn't quite reach to the bottom, so I had to add some more fluid to the jug before finishing, and then of course I spilled the VTM fluid everywhere. And then you gotta make sure and keep your animals away from it, because apparently my dog likes the taste of it, so I had to get him out of the way as well. Thanks for watching Engine Adventures review of the 2012 Honda Pilot and the VTM-4 all-wheel drive system. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and hit like and subscribe and comment down below.